Hey guys, I'm here again with another review, and now that I've finished working on that project I mentioned earlier, I should get more in the swing of things, seeing as how these are standalone episodes and not two-parters, which are just a pain to get screenshots and put together the editing for. But anyway, we should just jump right into it with See No Evil. See No Evil is a very solid standalone episode. I would also say that for people who don't normally watch things related to Batman, they could watch and fully enjoy this episode and get a good idea of how Batman operates, as well as what kind of stories are told with the character. What's particularly interesting about this is that there are no regular Batman characters besides Batman himself, not even Alfred, and no villains that are recognizable. I give this episode major props for feeling like an issue of Detective Comics put on screen. The audience is supposed to follow Batman as he does some actual detective work to catch the antagonist or solve the mystery, which is a great basic formula for single issues and a television series. That's why I think Batman the Animated Series works great no matter which episode, season, or box set you decide to watch. Not to say that this series doesn't have a few bad episodes, and I also love shows with season-long story arcs. Part of the weakness of standalone episodes is that for some shows, including Batman the Animated Series, the final episode you watch won't be an appropriate send-off, though other shows avoid this, like X-Men the Animated Series. Anyway, See No Evil centers around an ex-con named Lloyd Ventrix, who steals an experimental plastic that can make him invisible so he can see his daughter Kimmy, who thinks he's an imaginary friend, and she calls him Mojo. That doesn't sound like such a villain, does it? Well, the problem is that he steals jewels for Kimmy and plans to kidnap her when Kimmy reveals that her and her mother Helen are moving away where Ventrix can never visit Kimmy again. Batman has no actual connection to the specific family situation, but he doesn't have to. What's more important is that Batman can relate to the family situation personally, though this is more towards the end of the episode. This isn't a problem because at first Batman is just trying to figure out who this invisible thief is and how he's able to turn invisible, which is where the detective work comes in. What gets under Batman's skin is Ventrix trying to take Kimmy away from her mother against her will, and that prompts Batman's line, "Not in this lifetime, pal." That line sounds more like something a talkative superhero would say, but it's still well delivered. Because the inception of Batman came when Bruce Wayne lost his childhood and innocence, dealing with cases that involve children puts him in a bad mood, which is clear, but Batman doesn't let those feelings overwhelm him most of the time. Still, Ventrix is not just the villain either. His affection for his daughter seems genuine, and he actually goes to Helen with no violence or harsh words to ask her if he can see Kimmy, but she tells him to disappear, which is just there so Ventrix can say, "Be careful what you wished for." He's still a criminal, and it's understandable that Helen doesn't want Kimmy to be around him, but I did feel a little sorry for Ventrix. The first time Batman fights Ventrix, Batman gets absolutely pummeled, and I don't think I've ever seen the standard Batman being beaten to the point of near humiliation. The Batman uses his smarts like when he tries to splat paint all over Ventrix. Ventrix also taunts Batman as he's beating him, like when he says, "See you around, Batman." Too bad he can't say the same. The way he laughs after he says that brings to mind a quote from Spider-Man the Animated Series, when Spider-Man fights Hydra Man for the first time. The Spider-Man told Hydra Man, "For a guy new to this whole supervillain thing, you've certainly got the cliches down." I do appreciate that Batman doesn't dwell on the humiliation of his defeat, and continues to investigate every lead he can on how this man can turn invisible. The episode keeps everything at a very human level, as the invisibility comes from technology and not superpowers. It turns out that a scientist wanted to propose an invisibility plastic to Wayne Enterprises, which is how Batman begins the investigation. The scientist withdrew his proposal because the plastic was toxic, and his assistant called Sam Goodell tried to continue his work. Batman goes to Goodell's lab and reads the reports pertaining to the plastic, and after a brief misunderstanding, Goodell shows Batman how the plastic works and that some of it is missing. Goodell goes on to say that the only other person that would know about the plastic is Ventrix, who was an errand boy for the scientist who invented the plastic. This whole scene is really good, and the audience is as interested as Batman when Goodell demonstrates that the plastic bends light when the electric current goes through it, which adds a nice but not overbearing touch of science fiction. My only real problem with Goodell himself is that he notices that some of the plastic is missing, and that Ventrix is the only other person that would know about it, but he never put two and two together and alerted the police. I would also think that Goodell would be more likely to alert the police, considering he also tells Batman that it's toxic to people. While I'm on complaints, I'll mention the other complaint I have with this episode, and it's the one that jumps out at me the most. It's said that the plastic is toxic, but in what way? Does it deteriorate a person's body or affect a person's mind, or both? If the latter is the case, maybe Ventrix is not in complete control of his actions when he tries to kidnap Kimmy. Ventrix actually says that he feels no pain, and in his whole maniacal talk at the end with Batman, he says he doesn't care if it is poisoning him. He did steal the plastic with the intention of stealing jewels for his daughter, and at the beginning it seems like they've already met a few times before, but maybe he wouldn't have gone so extreme in this episode if the plastic wasn't poisoning his mind, if in fact the plastic was doing that. I still buy that Batman would be pissed about the kidnapping, though maybe a little less angry towards Ventrix himself. Then again, maybe that isn't such a problem because he still intentionally stole the plastic in the first place, but perhaps the episode should have cleared this up a little. The scene where Helen and Batman realize that Kimmy has been taken is beautifully dramatic, and I also like that Helen's smart enough to put the connection between the invisibility and Kimmy's imaginary friend Mojo. I'll go more into the scene when talking about production. Going back to the idea of Batman wanting to preserve the innocence of children, I bet he was quite relieved at the end when he talks to Kimmy after stopping Ventrix by using water to see his outline. At the beginning, when Kimmy tells Mojo that they're moving, her mother Helen comes in and asks who she's talking to. I really like that she says that again before the episode ends, but with worry after all that they had been through. What I liked even more was Kimmy's response of, "Just Batman, Mommy." I thought that was genuinely cute. Before moving on to the usual production part of this review, I would like to say that overall this story was very well executed. But let's move on to the animation. This episode looks great, and I had so much fun getting screenshots of every time Batman was on screen. Batman's cape looks so fluid, and Batman's eyes often look very expressive and sharp. For the episode in general, not just Batman specifically, it is very well animated, such as when the invisible Mojo puts a gold necklace on Kimmy. The way her hair swirled up looked very good, and that kind of thing is all over this episode. But come on, what we all really care about is that Batman looks friggin' awesome. The way the invisibility is played looks very convincing, so when people are being hit by nothing, the audience finds it believable. The final action sequence is a bit long for me, but it's very thrilling seeing Batman trying to stop an invisible car and riding on it alongside traffic and train tracks. The music provides great atmosphere, especially at the beginning as we don't see Ventrix walking down a rundown neighborhood. The musical theme of the episode really plays on the whole child innocence motif, which makes it even more unnerving. This also really works in the scene I mentioned before where Batman holds one of Kimmy's dolls after finding out that she's gone. I'm not sure why Batman picks up the doll, but it's wonderfully dramatic, and the music adds so much to it, and it adds a level of seriousness to the whole episode. Despite bringing up kidnapping of children and the situations of divorce and separation, this episode has good humor, actually. The most well-known instance of this is when Batman is speeding past two bums on top of an invisible car, and one of them says, "I didn't know he could fly." The voice acting is good as always. Ventrix is played by Michael Gross. Fun fact about him is that he played the father of Terry McGinnis in Batman Beyond. Kevin Conroy gave a great performance as usual, and at this point he sounds more confident in the role than he did in On Leather Wings, and it's a better representation of how he sounds throughout the entire series. The way he delivered the line "peekaboo" is just pure win. Overall, this is a great standalone episode where Batman gets to be a detective and deals with a case that hits home for him. The way this episode moves along is engaging, and the audience is with Batman every step of the way. This is not one of the best in the series, but it's damn good, and a good example of the quality of Batman the Animated Series on the whole. I give See No Evil a 4.5 out of 5. I've already reviewed standalone episodes, but this episode rises above many of them because of how good the execution is on all counts. reviewing good episodes feels good, you know what I mean? Looks like I'm still in luck because the next episode I'll be reviewing is Beware the Great Ghost. Stay tuned, that'll be lots of fun.